Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Urshan, and this is the 21 horror movies everyone should own. And I did the video before, 21 movies everyone should own, and that was created by All Movie Reviews with Craig, and then the Horror Man went and did the 21 horror movies everyone should own. So definitely got to give credit to both of those guys. Check out their channels. And this is my take. Now, I did list a few key horror films on my 21 movies everyone should own list, and I'm not going to repeat those here. However, I am going to include Halloween 2, the classic sequel from 1981, which I consider to be the greatest horror sequel of all time. Because it matches the look, feel, and tone of the original, beautifully. And I love the fact that Michael Myers is up front and center in this movie, gets a lot more screen time, yet he loses absolutely zero of the creep factor. And plus, I love that this movie has things that the original didn't have. This one has the over-the-top kills and the blood and gore, I love that about this. And not only that, but it continues the story from 1978 perfectly, the way it takes place on the same night. Next up is the classic Reanimator, based on the story from H.P. Lovecraft, starring Jeffrey Combs in my favorite horror performance of all time as Herbert West. I love the story. I love the direction from Stuart Gordon. I love the cast. Barbara Crampton, Bruce Abbott, David Gale are all fantastic. I love the gore effects are amazing. And I love the fact that this movie is just zany and crazy and over the top, and it doesn't care, It's just a blast, and it's awesome. Next up is the immortal classic, A Nightmare on Elm Street. The classic from Wes Craven, and this is, I feel, his best film. I just love the concept. It's just so original, such an amazing idea for a slasher film, And of course, Freddy Krueger is probably the most famous horror icon of all time. And I love the supporting cast. Heather Langenkamp is just amazing as Nancy Thompson, one of the best final girls. And, great supporting cast with John Saxon, Johnny Depp, Awesome, awesome movie. It's so scary. It's got an amazing score. Yeah, that's why I like this one better than any of the others. Next up is the one that started it all, Friday the 13th, the original from 1980. And yes, this is my favorite in the franchise. Why? Because I love the atmosphere in this movie. It creates a brilliant atmosphere at times. Very dark tone. And I love the cast. You got Kevin Bacon. I love the characters. Like Crazy Ralph. And of course, Mrs. Voorhees, played so well by Betsy Palmer. And I love the whole lore of Jason. It all starts here, and I love the way they introduce the Jason legend. Next up is The Evil Dead. Definitely got to put this on here because it's so groundbreaking and original. The direction from Sam Raimi is just incredible. And just a great concept. And I love Bruce Campbell, of course, in the role of Ash Williams. Is just an iconic character. I love the gore effects. I love the crazy, wild nature of the film, And I love that this is the scary one, where the sequels were more comedic at times. Next up is the zombie masterpiece, Dawn of the Dead. Now, I listed Night of the Living Dead in my 21 movies everyone must own, because I think that's the most important zombie film of all time. However, my favorite zombie film of all time is the sequel, Dawn of the Dead, from 1978. I just think it's a perfect zombie film. I love the whole mall setting. I love the crazy zombie carnage, and the blood and gore effects by Tom Savini is amazing. And I love the direction by George Romero and all the social commentary in there, you know. And it's got some great humor in there as well. Next up, we have what I feel is the greatest werewolf movie of all time. The Howling, yes. I freaking love this movie. I love so many quotable lines in this movie. I love the look of the werewolves. It's the best looking werewolf in my opinion. You know, when you see Eddie Quist in full monster mode, I mean, he's just terrifying, you know. That's a monster to me, you know. And I love the cast. So many great characters in this movie. It's got an awesome score, an absolutely awesome atmosphere. Next up, we have the immortal classic, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And what I feel is definitely one of the scariest movies ever made. Brilliant direction by the late, great Tobe Hooper. And this is definitely his masterpiece, no question about it. I mean, based on the exploits of Ed Gein, the Leatherface character anyway, and his family of cannibal killers. And it's amazing how this movie feels so raw and gritty and violent, but yet there's barely any blood shown in the movie, you know. And that's the brilliance of it, you know. And also that dinner table scene, the dinner scene is like the best example of complete madness, complete insanity. You know? It's just brilliant. Next up is what I feel the most influential film on the slasher genre. And you can say that about a lot of movies, but none more than Psycho. I mean, how many slasher movies have you seen where the killer has mommy issues? Think about it. So many slasher films are modeled after Psycho. I mean, you could say Peeping Tom. You could say Black Christmas. You could say Bay of Blood. But to me, none of them are more influential than this masterpiece from Alfred Hitchcock, which I feel is his best movie. And you got two incredible Oscar-worthy performances from Janet Leigh and Anthony Perkins, respectively. Next up, you got Dario Argento's masterpiece, the legendary Italian horror film director. And yes, this is the one that's actually not quite a giallo. It still has the giallo influences, but this is more of a supernatural horror film dealing with witchcraft. And I mean, just the visuals alone are amazing. The vibrant colors, the bright reds and blues and greens, you know. It's like a painting. It's so beautiful to look at. But then you have these gruesome, gory, bloody murder scenes that are so drawn out. I mean, it's just classic Dario Argento in every way. And you got that incredible, creepy-ass score from Goblin. And this here is my favorite Stephen King adaptation. Even though Stephen King doesn't like it, I don't care. Because this movie is absolutely amazing, and it's a classic in every way. And I think what does it is the direction from Stanley Kubrick, and how he creates such an incredible sense of claustrophobia within that huge Overlook Hotel. It's such a huge hotel, but you feel like you're trapped inside with this man who's losing his mind. And, you know, and you wonder whether these ghosts are actually there, or if they're in the mind of Jack Torrance and in the mind of Wendy Torrance, too. But you're never quite sure about that, but that's a really cool aspect as well. Just an amazing film. So epic. Next up, you absolutely must own The Exorcist. How could you not? I mean, this film is just a masterpiece. And, yeah, I mean, it's so scary. The atmosphere is incredible. The makeup effects are just top notch. I mean, I thought Max von Sydow was actually that old as Father Merrin, but he wasn't that old at that time. You know, it's just the great makeup effects. And obviously the makeup effects on Regan, and what a brilliant performance by Linda Blair. Just incredible. It's so scary. It's an amazing film. It's a 5-star masterpiece. Next up we have The Omen. Doesn't get much scarier than The Son of Satan, the ultimate bad child movie. And you got top-notch acting in this movie as well. Some of the best acting I've ever seen in a horror movie, with Gregory Peck and Lee Remick. It's just an amazing story, and I love how subtle it is, you know. You never see Damien doing, like, ridiculous over-the-top things, or shooting powers out of his hands or anything. Everything is made to look like an accident, you know. I love that. And next up, we must pay homage to the Universal Classic Monsters with The Wolfman, starring the legendary Lon Chaney Jr. as Lawrence Talbot. I absolutely love this movie. I love the tragedy of the character of Lawrence Talbot, and he's played so brilliantly by Lon Chaney Jr. He's such a likable guy, but yet he's got this deadly curse of lycanthropy, you know? And it's forcing him to kill people, you know? And the fact that he's such a good guy, you feel so bad for him, you know? And obviously, you got to have Frankenstein as well. I mean, it doesn't get any better than Boris Karloff's performance as the monster. And that incredible makeup job on the monster as well is so recognizable, so iconic. And the amazing gothic feel and tone of this film as well. It's so awesome, and you absolutely must own it. Just as you must own Dracula as well, from Universal Pictures from 1931, with the legendary Bela Lugosi in the role of Dracula. And yes, this is what I feel to be the definitive performance of Dracula by Bela Lugosi. And that pains me to say, because I absolutely love Christopher Lee in the role of Dracula, but I cannot deny that, you know, Bela Lugosi defined the character for all time. So yes, you must have all three of those Universal horror masterpieces. And next up is what I feel to be perhaps the most original horror film ever made, Phantasm, from 1979. This movie's brilliant, and it's like out there. It's just so interesting and creative. There's elements of sci-fi in there with the portals, and you got the tall man, you know, he's like kind of this ghost, you know, and he's got these dwarf servants that, you know, what happens is he kidnaps people and turns them into these dwarf creatures. And the tall man can also change shape. He's like a shapeshifter. He turns into this beautiful women to lure men in and fatten them up for the kill. And of course you got those amazing spheres that are such a great visual, you know, they got the little knives pop out in them and stab people in the head and drain their blood, you know. This movie's just awesome. Next up, you got the legendary Carrie, another Stephen King adaptation on the list. I think what does it for this movie is the brilliant direction, once again, by Brian De Palma. Just his style in this film, the way it's shot is just amazing. Of course, you got the Oscar-worthy performances of Sissy Spacek as young Carrie White, and Piper Laurie as her religion-crazed fan, you know. Religious-crazed mother, I should say. Next up, I had to put a horror anthology film on this list because this is the perfect horror anthology film, and the best in my opinion. Every single story in this film is so great, and I love the way they lead into each story. It's so brilliantly shot, and it's such a great collaboration between Stephen King and the legendary George A. Romero together. And what a fine combination they make, you know. These are three well-told stories. They're scary. They even have some fun, you know, with the Father's Day, you know. I want my cake. And then you got Stephen King starring in that one story about the meteor that crash lands, you know, once he touches it, his hands start to grow into like a plant, you know. It's amazing. And you got zombies in there, you know, with the Leslie Nielsen story. You got insects in there, you know. Awesome, awesome movie, and each story is so compelling, especially the crate, I think, is the scariest one. Next up, to me, is the ultimate psychological horror film, and that is Rosemary's Baby. Yes. I absolutely love this movie. It's the ultimate example of a slow burn, suspense-filled. I mean, the tension just mounts and mounts and mounts until you get that incredible classic ending. And you got a brilliant performance by Mia Farrow, who just carries the film. And I just love the fact that you never know, like, what's gonna happen, you know. Is this all in her mind, or is this really happening to this young pregnant woman? Or is it just the hormones making, with her just seeing stuff? Is she just losing her mind, you know, because she's pregnant, you know? Or is this really happening with this evil satanic cult that wants her baby, you know? How's it gonna end, you know? And last but certainly not least is the epic Hellraiser. And this movie is an absolute classic. Another one of the most original horror films ever made, by the legendary Clive Barker, based on his novel The Hellbound Heart. I mean, how can you forget the visions of the Cenobites, you know, led by Pinhead, played by Doug Bradley. So amazing. And you got the Chatterer, and you got the girl with the, you know, and you got the dude with the sunglasses. It's amazing. This movie's brutal, it's gory, at the same time it's beautifully filmed and directed by Clive Barker himself. Awesome gore effects, it's scary, it's crazy, it's bloody, and it's brilliant. And it uses sex as well, like the primordial instincts of S&M and, you know, pain and pleasure, you know. Very, very interesting. Alright guys, that's it for my 21 horror movies everyone must own. And definitely pick up these movies if you haven't already. These are must-haves, guys. And thank you for joining me, Sean Patrick Urshan, in the Horror Corner. Tune in and stay scared.